As most new ministers resume duties today, Nigerians can now begin to task the next level squad of President Muhammadu Buhari ahead of the next 4 years. And the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal has dismissed the petition filed by the Hope Democratic Party, HDPs, challenging the conduct of the February 23rd presidential election, which returned President Buhari for a second term in office. Hello everyone and welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbali at Channels Television's global headquarters in Lagos. Well, let's check out some of the top stories that we are following for you. First and foremost, the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal has dismissed a petition filed by the Hope Democratic Party, HDP, challenging the conduct of the February 23rd presidential election, which returned President Muhammadu Buhari for a second term in office. The presidential candidate of the HDP, Chief Ambrose Owuru, and his party, HDP, had on March the 7th filed the petition seeking the nullification of President Buhari's election on grounds that the conduct of the election on the 23rd of February 2019 by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, was illegal, null, and void on account of its postponement from February 16th to the 23rd. They also asked the 5-man panel to declare them winner of the presidential election, having been elected president by 50 million Nigerians through a referendum conducted on the 16th February 2010. They specifically prayed the tribunal to order their inauguration as president within 48 hours of hearing their petition based on the referendum on February 16. But delivering the judgment, the tribunal in a unanimous decision held that the petition, which was based on the purported referendum held on the 16th of February 2019, was outside the jurisdiction of the tribunal. That's just how we start the program. But we have some other political stories for you on our political roundup.
President Muhammadu Buhari has been in Kaduna State today for the commissioning of some projects in the state. He was received by Governor Nasser El-Rufai and other top government officials at the Nigerian College of Aviation Technology, Zaria. During the visit, the president commissioned the Phase 2 of the Zaria Regional Water Supply Project, completed during Governor El-Rufai's first term. The Edo State government has announced a partnership with Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, to fight corruption in public service. The governor of Edo State, Mr. Godwin Obaseki, said this while presiding over a weekly executive council meeting at the government house in Benin City, the Edo State capital. Governor Obaseki ordered that any public servant found culpable in corrupt practices will face the full wrath of the law.
Any case of corruption found against any officer will be dealt with ruthlessly. We will not only take action, take disciplinary action, we will prosecute.
The Executive Secretary of the National Human Rights Commission, Mr. Tony Ojukwu, is asking the newly appointed ministers to mainstream human rights into government operations by implementing the National Action Plan for the Protection and Promotion of Human Rights in each ministry. The Executive Secretary says mainstreaming human rights in government operations will reinforce legitimacy of government, reduce insecurity, ensure zero tolerance to extrajudicial killings, as well as fulfill Nigeria's international human rights obligation.
We want to build a culture of respect of human rights in our country. And we think that these are major policy makers. These are major instruments for the realization of government programs and activities.
As the election for Kogi governorship polls draw closer, controversies are already brewing ahead of the election. And this is about the electoral umpire. Some politicians who say they belong to the Inter-Party Advisory Council in Kogi State are asking for the removal of INEC's resident electoral commissioner in Kogi State.
Vehemently request that he be immediately redeployed from Kogi State.
Now, everyone, to our discussion of tonight. It's a day after the inauguration of President Buhari's cabinet, and the work starts in earnest. There have been series of reactions to the composition of the cabinet and the portfolios and how appropriate they are to the personalities the cabinet presently has constituted. Tonight, our agenda is to look at the issues, the task set before the cabinet, the priorities of this government for the next 4 years, and the capacity to deliver. There's been a lot of criticism on series of issues for and against. A lot of people are talking about who gets what, who retains what, and the abilities of some of these people based on their background and the portfolio and the responsibilities that are being given. Some of them resumed work yesterday. Some of them fully resumed today, and they get started with the work. Let's look at some of the analysis we have for you. First and foremost, the composition, some of the numbers that may be important for you to know. First and foremost, there are 14 former ministers who got a second shot at opportunities serving in President Buhari's cabinet. There are 29 new names, some of the 29 new people who got into the cabinet, and there are 7 females in all, and 10 ex-governors, 2 former deputy governors, 9 lawyers in this cabinet, 6 ex-senators, and 1 serving lawmaker. Remember, Honorable Wajuba from Imo State, who is currently serving in the House of Representatives, now a minister serving in this cabinet. Let's quickly go to the distribution of portfolios by region. This has gotten a lot of Nigerians talking. If you look at some of the position, the region, and how they stand presently, Northwest with 10, Northeast 4 with State Ministry 3, North Central 3 and State Ministry 4, Southwest 5, State Ministry 2, Southeast 3, State Ministry 3, and South-South has substantive ministry of 3 and 4 state ministries. Let's break it down further for you. These are some of the faces of those who retain their portfolios. They were back, 14 of them who got back into this cabinet, but these are the people who've got a retainer in the cabinet, their portfolios, former portfolios, from Dr. Chris Ngige to Adamu, Ogbonaya Ono, Geoffrey Oyema, Zainab Ahmed. Well, the president's name is on that list because the president has headed the Ministry of Petroleum Resources in the last 4 years, but now he's still back. Adi Sirika, still aviation, Abubakar Malami, Lai Mohammed, and all of that. So, the new ministries, there are new ministries, of course, being created. 3 of them, they were not there in the last 4 years, but they are now here. Ministry of Special Duties and Intergovernmental Affairs, Ministry of Police Affairs, and the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management, and Social Development. These are some of the new ministries. Let's get talking, shall we? I have my panel tonight on the programs. Some of the ministers, of course, that you saw earlier, Babatunde Fashola, power ministry has been taking of the ministries he held the last time. My panel tonight, I have Dr. Benson Enikuome, a lawyer and a former member of the board of the NDDC. Also there in our Abuja studio is Mr. Cletus Obun, a former lawmaker and a chieftain of the APC. Let's begin the conversation tonight, and perhaps let's kick off with this conversation around the distribution, the regional distribution of the portfolios. If that slide gets back on screen so my guests can be able to react to it. How do you react? Let me begin with you, Dr. Enikuome. How do you react to the 6 geopolitical zones, of course, of the country have their share in the appointment, albeit that at different degrees? How would you react to the distribution?
Well, it's a little bit worrisome. However, the choice of who works with Mr. President is strictly that of his, because the buck ends at his table. But taking into consideration the issue of federal character in Nigeria, it is expected that he should be able to get at least one competent person, which the law requires him to do though, from each of the states in the federation that will work with him. And I think that is what he has done in choosing the ministers, and he has also added 6 extra ministries to that. But the worrisome aspect of it is this. I have found out that some states are perennially known to be having ministers of state, and that is what their portion has been. While some states usually and have consistently maintained the position of substantive minister. Now, if you look at the Northwest has 7 states. And then even if you give each of the states one minister each, it will follow that you will still have extra 3 left. And I do believe that other ministers who were chosen were also chosen and given substantive position. And there is not a single person that is a minister of state. I think looking at the country and looking at the way the country is structured, that is an area that may not be neat enough and not good enough. But the choice is that of the president. He has chosen whoever he wishes to choose. He has also gone ahead to appoint, put them in each portfolio that he deems fit. The question will also be, will they perform? And I think that will be the ultimate thing. But for people who will feel the sentiment, which I think every Nigerian has a right to feel, it will appear that there is a lopsidedness in the apportioning or distribution of the substantive ministerial position as is indicated on the screen. I think it's a thing that ought to have been looked at before he finally concluded on sale.
Mr. Cletus Obun, please coming to the fray, if you may. How would you heard what Dr. Enikoma is saying? A lot of Nigerians are also reacting to it. How would you react to this?
Well, let me say that it is the right of all political actors. I speak first as a Nigerian, then I will get down to the brass tacks about the issue of regional representation in the cabinet. One of the foremost things you must realize is that junior minister or substantive minister, you sit on the Federal Executive Committee, a first principle, which means you have access to the president and therefore you have access to make contributions each time you have to be at the Federal Executive Committee meeting. In terms of execution, states like Cross River and personages that appear on the scene as ministers, either junior ministers or otherwise, most Nigerians feel some people didn't deserve to get what they got and others are going to be underutilized. So there is the difference and the balancing and counterbalancing of potential and performance. Ultimately, Nigerians will want to know what the ministers are going to bring on the table and what value they will add to what they are going to have. Ordinarily, you will agree that in the last term, the Southeast, for example, because one of the things that kept recurring when cynics were insinuating that people were being given appointments on the basis of how much they contributed in terms of votes gotten from zones, in the last term was South Northwest, which has 7 states and contributed so much to the victory, got 4 out of 7 states. They got 4 junior ministers, as you term them here. And the Southeast, which produced one of the worst results in the last tenure, had 4 substantive ministers out of 5 states. In this present era, none has more than 50% of the states occupying that. And like I keep insisting, Nigerians must look for performance. Once there is performance, nobody wants to know who is from where and who got and who has what kind of degree or what kind of qualification. They want to see performance. And I think that is what ultimately will decide whether Nigerians are satisfied or not. And I insist, the president must have the courage to reshuffle his cabinet or drop people when they are not performing. And that goes down to the electorate and to Nigerians. They must have to hold the president accountable on account of keeping ministers for 4 years, keeping service chiefs for 4 years as if they are tenured like himself. It is at his discretion to know which area is performing and which one area is not, and who to drop and who to reshuffle to put where at each time, like a coach in a football field.
All right.
You cannot continue to return non-performing ministers and expect that Nigerians should clap. So
okay,
I expect that in this
Mr.
time,
Obun,
this
apologies. Let me
will
quickly
have
butt
to
in
take note of
because
that.
we need to take this break. We'll take a break, but when we come back, it comes down to one thing: performance. This team that the president has, he calls them the next level team. How can they deliver to Nigerians on the basis of the promises of the APC? We'll dissect that when we return from this break, everyone. Join us again. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us on the program. The Buhari presidency for the 2019-2023 stretch is promising that it's going to provide more jobs for Nigeria, get Nigerians out of poverty, and also get the nation working again. But if you look at some of the faces that you see presently, these are perhaps some of the cabinet members who have a lot of burden on their shoulder in terms of the priorities of the government, especially attention ministries, like those who might have a direct impact on the lives of Nigerians and how much food comes on their table. So the Minister of Works and Housing, the Minister of Transportation, Minister of Labor and Employment, Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development. These are very critical. Let's get back to the conversation with my panel tonight. Mr. Cletus Obun is a former lawmaker and an APC chieftain, and also Dr. Benson Enikuomeyi, a lawyer and a former member of the NDDC board. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on tonight. You saw that piece of information, and the reality is, Dr. Enikuomeyi, do you have any fear as to the performance of these people based on the priorities and the promises of the APC of getting millions of Nigerians out of poverty, providing millions of jobs every year?
If you do the same thing over and over again, you do not expect that a different result will come from it. But the point is, the people that have just been appointed are fresh. I want to believe that they will bring the freshness of their experience to bear on what the president has as his own agenda for the country. But I'm quick to add that a man can only give what he has. By my background as a lawyer, it will be difficult for me to function very effectively if I'm made to head the Ministry of Health, because professionally it will be difficult, though I may understand one or two things that may be said in that ministry, but because that is not my background, it may be difficult in performance. For example, and that is not casting aspersion on whoever heads that ministry, the Ministry of Agriculture, I expect that ministry to be headed by somebody who is a professional in that respect, either an agronomist or somebody who is trained in that respect. I do not know the background of the present minister, but I have not so much as heard about him. I also believe that similar things should take place in other ministries. My take would be that, Mr. President, having experienced this in the first term of his office, he should have looked for professionals, as it were, who are members, possibly, of his party, and some of them may not necessarily be members of his party. Now, I do not want to make comparison because of things that are happening in the country, but I do recall that this woman that headed the Ministry of Finance during Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, was not a member of any political party. She was picked by Chief Olusegun Obasanjo to be able to restructure the economy at that time. And she went ahead and fought for the cancellation of the debt that we owe to Paris Club. And I think this is what should happen. Some of the ministers, without mentioning names, I am afraid they may be square peg in a rectangular hole in this respect. Yes, they can tango along for a moment, but we do not need tangling along now. We have gone through this path for 4 years. At this point, we should be cruising. So if we just bring in a person whose background has nothing to do with the ministry where he works, and I don't want anybody to give me the reason that, oh, the civil servants are there, they are technocrats, they will explain to him. Will you be explaining to a person who cannot appreciate and understand the nitty-gritty of what is happening in your ministry? I think that this is what should have been done. And having not done this, I nurse a little fear. I nurse a little fear about the performance of some of them. Well, There are some of them who have been chief executive of state, of governors of state, who have overseen the affair of their state. Well, they may not be professional in that respect, but having overseen the affairs of their state, yes, they may have gotten some good knowledge. But I think my take, if I were to be in the position to advise him before now, is to look for persons who, as at this time, when they drive the vehicle, they will drive it well.
All right.
To
Dr.
the
Enugu,
destination,
let me allow
and not somebody
Mr.
that will be
Obun
putting
to
through
come in
as
here.
populi
Yeah.
in this respect.
Mr. Obun, please kindly come in here and react quickly to what Dr. Enugu has said today. But a lot of people will ask also that would you consider the federal cabinet as is presently constituted as perhaps the best foot that the party APC can put forward, considering the promises that your party has made to Nigerians?
Well, let me say this about the fears that constantly reverberate across the country and among the minds and boggle the minds of Nigerians. He has laid a foundation here to show that necessarily going to the university and studying and working experience. I give the example of my minister from my state. He read international relations. He worked in the oil industry. He is not by any means into petrochemical engineering or anything. But when he appeared on the floor of the Senate for screening, he gave a 5-star performance of a man who knows his onions. And what does that tell you? He's now put in power. The fear would be that he may not have been familiar with that area. And all of us in Cross River State expected that he would be in the Ministry of Petroleum. But like I said, I expect that the president may change his mind later on. But to say that people who did not study this or do not have a background in this or that are not going to make a performance telling, it's not to nurse a correct fear. The correct posture and picture to take is that exposure and experience from 14 former ministers who are returning to their ministries, most of them from junior ministers to substantive ministers, 14 of them, and then the other 26, you make a man like Rauf Aregbesola, he comes with enthusiasm, ideological focus, and of course, exposure as a former governor. Then you go again and meet several other persons, a Fashola, a lawyer, a senior advocate of Nigeria. You expect that he should be Attorney General. You meet a Festus Keyamo. You meet a Timothy Silva. Name them. Meet the environment minister. You are going to meet a crop of Nigerians who are not just knowledgeable, who are not just competent, but whose performance can only be told by time. And that tale can only come at the end of this tenure. But as I said, the president should have his eyes on the ball and insist that performance should have benchmarks and timelines within which non-performance can lead you out of the cabinet to be replaced. Again, the issue of Okonjo-Iweala coming from outside and being a non-party man. In the last administration, you have people like Udo Udoma. He had no party ticket. The Minister of State Petroleum, Ibe Ikachuku, he came in as a professional and as a technocrat. You saw them and their performance. Today, we've lost them. And today, again, like I said, the 26 that have come, you read their resume. And each of them showed that they have a grasp of what they want to do and can do and perform for Nigeria. So I do think and expect that this cabinet will not in any way give Nigerians cause to worry. Let's watch and see them and judge them as they go. And we must have our eyes too to watch them and monitor them. It is not enough.
We need to leave it at that because of our time. I know a lot of Nigerians still have their expectations and they are looking to the performance of these ministers. I must sincerely thank my partner tonight, Dr. Benson Enukoman. It's good to see you again, a lawyer and a former member of the board of the NDDC. Mr. Cletus Albon, a former member of the National Assembly and a chieftain of the APC. That's where we leave it tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Seun Okinbale. Bye-bye.